What's going on, Mad Hatters, and welcome back to the Madhouse. And today's video is all about the amazing DLC Bologna, our first DLC, and it feels like years at this point. And what an event it was. The cast and crew did amazing. The players were great. Of course, there was drama and there was all these things, and it was just a magnificent event. There was even a power outage. Like, there was everything going on at DLC Bologna, and it was awesome. It was great. In this video in particular, we're going to talk about the top 8 lists. We're going to talk about the best green-blue list, the best red-purple list, and then my pick for what was my favorite list of the weekend, as well as the day 1 and day 2 breakdowns and how those converted, and was it what we expected, was there something that really stood out, things like that. So as we get going into more set champs, we have 3 more weekends. Maybe now you can pull from these lists. Maybe you like a tech option and you kind of decide. Another big thing to think about is with DLC Bologna, these decks that won, the decks that did really well, that's probably going to be a big impact in next weekend's set champs. Okay, speaking of set champs, I will have a video later this week that's going over a bigger, more widespread meta breakdown across a whole bunch of events, and then also highlighting people that sent me their list that won first place or just really happy with their list. Maybe it's really spicy, because there are some really spicy ones, so stay tuned for that as well. But let's jump into the actual breakdown of the event. Let me get my face out of here. Bang. And here is the breakdown. Okay, so looking at day 1, that's yellow, it's on the left, and then day 2 is green, that's on the right. So looking at it, it's exactly what we expected. To be perfectly honest, the top 5 is everything that people expected. The only thing that's different is, or maybe gonna be surprising, is what would have been the number of decks in 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, all right, and what was most represented there. But everyone knew going into it that Blurple, that Amethyst Sapphire, was going to be the most represented deck, and of course we weren't wrong. 683 players playing Amethyst Sapphire, and that's a 37% meta share of the event. Just under 1,900 people according to Inkdex, 37%. And also these numbers came from Fanfinity as well, so not just Inkdex, but 37%. That is a massive meta share, and it really is. Like, I can understand why people are so wishy-washy on how they feel about the meta, because 37%, like, I don't know what else to say besides that. But big representation, and when the deck has the tools that it has a good early game, a great mid game, and a phenomenal late game with some of the best answers in the game, and resource creators with second star to the right and things. Hades, like, it's to be expected, and it's not surprising to see such a big breakdown. And then of course 33% going into day 2, so they lost a few percentage points. But what you'll see is what gained percentage points were the aggro decks, because when we look at it, we see that we had Amber Steel 19% on day 1, 20% on day 2, and then the green yellow, the emerald amber, 6% on day 1 into 12% on day 2. So that is a big deal. Like, that is something that it tells us that these aggro decks are, they came to beat Blurple, and that's what they did. That's exactly what they did, is they came in and they really beat down these Blurple decks. But then what that did is it made room for Purple Steel to really kick butt on day 2, and that's exactly what Purple Steel did, because you'll see in another slide what the top 8 breakdown was, with 3 Purple Steel, so the highest representation into top 8. And it's precisely because aggro had such a big representation on day 2. So it's so interesting, because you see, everyone knows that Blurple's the deck to beat. So a bunch of people jump on aggro in that green yellow and the yellow steel, the amber steel, and then meanwhile you have the amethyst steel sitting there waiting to prey on those. And that's what they did to do so well, is they preyed on those aggro decks. So looking at anything else that might have stood out, you see the green blue, that Emerald Sapphire with 15% on day 1, rising to 16% on day 2. And then of course the you look at Emerald Steel, the 6th most represented deck. You had 46 decks on day 1, 2%, going to 6 decks on day 2 with 2%. And I think that is what I expected to be the 6th most represented deck. It was going to be either that or Blue Steel, and both of them doing things into the meta that you'd expect, both being a weaker into Blurple in my opinion, but being stronger into those aggro decks. So kind of what you decide to play in that route. I think Green Steel though just has a little bit more headway into Blurple because they can tech in things that are a little bit more aggro, things like Cursed Merfolk or Prince Philip, or yeah, I think it was Prince Philip, the 3/2 ward character, maybe. I could be way off, but I think this is really interesting how we see that Blurple fell and then aggro went up, and then you see the top 8 with Purple Steel being the most represented deck. And we'll get to that in 2 slides. This is the breakdown that came from Fanfinity, so you can take a screenshot of that. I'm not going to continue to go over it just because, well, I kind of just did. So, but let's look at the top 8. And like I said earlier, Purple Steel, Amethyst Steel with 3 decks in the top 8. And then you see, of course, what you'd expect. You have 3 aggro decks, 2 of them being the Emerald Amber and 1 of them being the Amber Steel. But even this Green Steel deck had a lot of aggro things to it, which pushes you to having this one Blurple deck in top 8. And when we look at this Blurple deck, you'll see that it had quite a few options into aggro that were going to help it. And one card in particular, one really great tech option into Blurple or into aggro that really helped it into those matchups. And you'll see also though how this one Blurple deck really they really did well. A big part of that is because Purple Steel was able to prey on these aggro decks, and then Blurple was able to dodge aggro decks throughout the most of the day, which is the dream come true for Blurple. Like, that's what they want to see. But we'll get to that when we talk about the list, because I think the list is next. And it is. Our first DLC champion of Season 2 is Monado, and it was a great best of 5. They had to play all 5 games, and it was awesome. I think it came down to a couple misplays in the end, but that's not to say that both players didn't make some. Monado, though, phenomenal player. He was on the live stream quite a bit, and he just did a lot of really top-notch things. Against Green Steel, he was able to make sure that he was attacking things, or I think it was against Green in general. He was making sure to never have too much damage counters on any one character. He was denying Calhoun value, denying Go-Go value. He was just playing very, very well. So it was really impressive. And when you look at the list, though, there are things that just really stand out. Of course, the big one that sticks out is the 5-cost Ursula. Monado swears by that Ursula, saying that it is incredibly underestimated, and it put in a lot of work. That Ursula essentially being able to answer boards the same way Elsa does, because you can get into these stalemate turns where no one wants to turn sideways, and now you have 6 ways to do that. You have the Elsas and you have the Ursulas, and that's what happened. Those Ursulas, I'm gonna actually get my face out of the way so you can see that, and that's what you're doing, and that they're just turning things sideways. It sets up great bell value and so many more things. And so looking at the rest of it, he went 3 on the Rafikis and 3 on the Basils, both great into aggro. Again, that's what you want to see. And then also 9 on the ramp. So he has the 1 jump ahead, the 4 sails, and the 4 T-pos. And I think you have to go heavier on the ramp, because when you look at his list, he's also really high on the high cost uninkables. He's got 4 Hades, 1 big Elsa, 1 dig a little deeper, and 1 second star to the right. So we're looking at 4, 5, 6, 7 high cost uninkables that can be a little dangerous. It can be. So, and that's not as high as some decks, but when you run that many high cost uninkables, it's nicer to run that many ramp cards, because now you don't have to alter as many. That the percentage of finding that ramp gets a little bit better, right? Based off of altering 6 or things like that. But looking at his matches, this is something he shared on his Twitter, and I'll try and link that in the description. It was kind of a dream come true day for him. It really was. He saw the matches he wanted. I mean, when you look at the Amber Steel matches, you see the Purple Steel matches, Amethyst Steel, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 Amethyst Steals across the whole day. And that's, again, that's what Blurple wants to see. They want to dodge these aggro decks. It's not to say he lost to them, because he had 2 aggro matches. He had the one against the Sea Dogs in quarterfinals, and then one against Amber Steel, and he went 2-1-1 on the draw, and then 2-0 on the play. But this is what you want to see. So if you're going into a local meta with a lot of Purple Steel, then Blurple's going to be a great option. But did you also see that he did well against these other decks? But I mean, it just goes to show. And again, Minato was ready for aggro decks. He had the 5-cost Ursula. He had the magical maneuvers, which that isn't awful into aggro decks either. You have the elephants, which is great. The 6 1-drops to help you get those elephants down. It's not bad into aggro decks either. So it's not to say that if he saw aggro all day that it wouldn't have gone well for him either. But the deck did great. He piloted it. There's no denying that he piloted the deck very well. He made some really intelligent decisions, and it was very well deserving of that first place finish, especially seeing when you look at this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 on the draws throughout the day to get him first in Swiss. Like that's really impressive. It's really impressive, and it's what you also expect from a Sapphire deck. Sapphire decks, I think, are some of the best decks on the draw because they can catch up in that ink when they ramp. So, and also it just kind of helps if they miss ramp, because they'd have that extra draw to get there. So extra 2 draws to get that ramp, which is really good. Congratulations, Minato. You definitely deserved it. It was great to watch your live stream matches and see how you piloted to success. And I look forward to seeing if you go to more DLCs or if you just kind of chill out until Worlds at this point. But whatever you do, best of luck, man, and good showing. So next up, we have second place. We have Vincent with his version of Purple Steel, and Vincent absolutely killed it. He was great to watch on stream as well, and the deck is just doing some things. And speaking of those things, there are things that stand out. I think the first and foremost one is 3 docks. All right, not 4, which is interesting. I think that is a very interesting choice. When we look at uninkable counts for the deck, we have 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So not a massive amount of uninkables. And a lot of players will talk about how Purple Steel, like, you see Doc to win, and because you're able to refill your deck. But when we look at the deck, Doc isn't the only draw power. You have Doc, you have the Cantrip and Genie, and then you also have the Diablo and the Yzma. So I'm assuming that Vincent just felt like those were enough options, that Yzma was going to be enough, that he didn't have to risk having 4 docks and increasing the chances of bricking on those docks and having multiple of those in hand, because we're not running something like a Mulan that can cycle those out of your hand. Another thing that stands out, the Madam Mim Skater, right? This one is massive in Purple Steel right now. A lot of people weren't really high on it, and then all of a sudden, everybody is. And I don't remember, we'll look at it, we'll pay attention to that, but I think all 3 Purple Steel lists that were in top 8 were on some number of Madam Mim Skaters. So that is a pretty big deal. And I don't think her name is actually Skater, but I'm going to call her that. So, but looking at it, that's like, the Madam Mim Skater was massive, and you saw her put in work every time you saw Purple Steel get on, and they top decked that changed everything. That changed all the math. All of a sudden, Calhoun can take out a Tiana for just 3 ink, which is crazy. You just pay the Tiana tax. Like, there's just so many things. And then that Madam Mim, you just have to respect it forever. They just play it, and it sits there kind of like a Prince John and just does nothing, except your opponent now has to understand that all of your characters get +1 challenger. Now, the other thing that kind of stood out is the number of evasive fighting characters in Vincent's deck. We have the one of Jafar in the top right. Then we have the 2 Smees, the 4 Genies. So, and then also the 3 Happies. So just lots of potential to fight with evasive in this deck that we're not seeing a lot of. We haven't been seeing that in Purple Steel with that many evasive characters. And then finally, the 2 White Roses. That is, like, normally when I've been seeing these Purple Steel decks, they go 4 Giant Cobras, 4 White Roses, 4 Docks, 4 Calhouns. That's the core. Those are the 16 core cards in the deck. And Vincent's over here like, you know what I need? 2 White Roses, 3 Calhouns, and 3 Docks. I do not need 4 of those. And again, he took second place with it. And watching his matches, like, those Blurple matches weren't blowouts. Like, those were good games. He won one of the games on the draw, and it was great. And if you want to see the match, the link will be in the description. I have the finals on my channel. Maybe I'll put a thing up in the corner somewhere. But yeah, it was great. It was fun watching the deck. I think the deck is great. Maybe if you're really worried about draw, you can add in a 4th Dock. But I think the easiest thing might be to just cut the Jafar, the one of Jafar for the 4th Dock. Maybe if you're going to really heavy aggro, you add in a 4th Calhoun, that kind of thing. But I have a feeling that Vincent put in a lot of work to get these very specific numbers that he got. So yeah, just really good. It was great to see and pilot. And again, in a meta that had so many Blurple representations, I'm sure he played a lot of Blurple throughout the day. So congratulations, Vincent, on a great finish, and enjoy that golden Mickey. All right. So next up, we've got Bruno on a really cool Green Steel list, and it's Green Steel aggro. Like, that's what this is. We're even running the Freds. Fred being whenever this character is challenged, gain 2 lore. So awesome. Where the deck, you can when you look at it, it's kind of just like, how did this do so well? But then you look at it again, and there's a lot of reasons it did so well because of what the meta is. First off, we look at the 1-drops. We're on 4, 8, 10, 18 1-drops. So you can just throw your hand away. Right now, against all these Blurple decks, you just spam all these 1-drops. You start questing, you lay down an Emerald Chromicon, you get a Dock down, and then you just go to town. And then you have a Strength of a Raging Fire that does an astronomical amount of damage. And then you have Go-Go's for the reach. You have the Ursula for green-blue, but also really good into Purple Steel. It's good into Blurple. It's good into a lot of stuff in the local meta right now. And then, of course, the Louis, great into Amber Steel aggro. Goodbye, Tiana. Goodbye, Daisy. Goodbye, so many different things. I think there was one match we were watching I think it was Green Steel. They had 3 Louis against Amber Steel, so they just never stood a chance. But then we look at the rest of the deck. It's running that god-awful ward keyword, right? So for ward characters, we have Prince Philip, the 3/2/2 that I talked about earlier, and then also the Heathcliff, the 3/3 ward quest for 2. So lots of ward that's going to be hard to deal with. No Strength of a Raging Fire, great top decks. We have the Peats, we have the Fire the Cannons, which I think is just one of the best cards of the current rotation. It's like, there's 100 reasons why this deck did so well and will do so well. I think it has answers to everything, really, and that's really all there is to say about it. I mean, you look at it, we have lots of quests for 2 characters. Fred doesn't quest for 2, but he's going to gain you 2 lore for the most part. You can still trade really well into dogs. Like, it's just a cool deck. I think anyone could take this and get some practice and some reps in it and do well with it. I love the one of Clarabelle, like, because that Clarabelle forces your opponent to respect that you might have the big Clarabelle, and so now they have to answer it maybe over something else. It draws you a card, and then also it forces them to keep their hand a little bit smaller in case you do run the big Clarabelle and maybe you're shifted on 5. So I think the list is really neat. I really do. I'd be curious if after so many rounds there's anything you'd change about it, but I think this is a top-notch deck. I really do. It has the steel cards that I know and love. It has great counters into what the meta is. I like it. I think it's cool. Congratulations, Bruno. Next up, we've got Nick on purple steel. His list, it's a little bit different, right? So I talked about a lot of these purple steel decks have kind of that core 16. So whereas this one's not that core 16, we're only on 3 Calhoun. We are back on the 4 Docks and the 4 White Roses. But again, you'll see the 2 Madam Mims. That was, I'd mentioned all 3 of the purple steel lists in top 8 were running Madam Mim. I think you have to expect every purple steel list you run into now to be running Madam Mim. That doesn't mean they will be, but you have to be ready that they will be running it. So have an answer for it, Louis, for example, or just understand that may come down at any moment. Nick, of course, so you'll see Nick on 4 Docks and 3 Yzmas, whereas Vincent was on 3 Docks and 4 Yzmas. So a little bit different there. Nick running the 2 Fire the Cannons, the 4 Strength of a Raging Fires, so great on the draw potential. No Pete's in this list, and so that's a big difference between Nick's list and Vincent's list. Is Vincent, if we go back, was on those 3 Pete's versus no Pete's in this list, all right? But again, purple steel, it was in a great place to do really well with so many aggro decks in day 2. Like that's what you want to see as a purple steel player. So I like it. I think this is something you'd expect to see a little bit more. Again, you see the 4 White Roses, the 4 Giant Cobras, the 4 Docks. But I still like how we see these lists, and people they're still making it their own. They're still finding the numbers that work for them instead of these are the 60 cards, which is a meta that we were in for a while. Like when we looked at those red-blue decks, the green steel decks and things like that, like everybody was essentially running like the same 59 cards, and then they do like one ratio of numbers differently. So right now though, it's different, right? And I really like that. I think that's a lot of fun for the meta. But next up, we've got Enrico on making top 8. And I have top 8 for the next 4 decks because Ink decks didn't really make it clear on the placing. Okay, so so I'm just going to go top 8 so I don't say maybe Enrico got 8th and then he actually got 5th and someone gets upset. So just top 8. All right, congratulations. But Enrico running Amber Emerald, okay? Doing dogs, right? Doing the dirty dog thing, and that's what's happening. Look at all those 1 drops. The entire top row of this list. We've got 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 25 1 drops. Like, oh my goodness. That is gonna be a nasty, nasty thing. I mean, you play Pluto on 1, and then I think we saw one of the games on the live stream, we saw Pluto on 1, and then I think he dropped 2 ladies and then something else. I think he dropped 2 ladies and a tramp. Like it was wild. So all of a sudden he has 4 characters. Yeah, 1, 2, 3. He has 4 characters on turn 2. Like that's wild. That is absolutely wild. And what this deck can do and how it can just go so fast. And if you can't answer it that quickly, then you just lose. I think like it's wild. Meanwhile, with the 4 Auroras and the 4 Plutos, you have the opportunity, you have a lot of opportunity to drop Tiana on turn 2, but you'll notice that Enrico decided to not go for Tiana. So he's not relying on that. And I think that's pretty a wise choice because again, you could go Tiana on turn 2 that quests for 2, or you could drop something like 2 ladies that are going to be, questing for more than that. So while this character has 3 attack or more, this character gets +2, right? And like that's a big deal because if you drop a tramp, now she's questing for 3, or you drop this lady while this character named Tramp in play, this character gets +1 lore. So what makes more sense to drop on turn 2? A Tiana that quests for 2 or 2 ladies that quest for 4, right? Something like that. Meanwhile, we look at the deck, we're on 2 of the shift tramps, so that's pretty common. And on this one, though, 4 improvises. And that improvise, again, great answer into the Iagos. It helps you trade really well and really catch people on off guard. It helps you cycle. It's a good card. Like there's very few downsides to running it because worst case scenario, you draw a card, okay? And then the 4 Ursulas, great into a lot of the decks right now, especially that green-blue, which can be a really nasty answer when they can drop a Under the Sea on turn 3. So that is great. So green-yellow just doing really, really well. Again, it had the best improvement of conversion rates from day 1 to day 2. Like that, like if that tells you anything. And so it tells you that they really thrived in a really heavy Blurple meta. So again, if you have time to practice with the deck and you have a really heavy Blurple meta, maybe this is the deck to run. Maybe this is what you try. Maybe it's this one, or maybe it's another one that we run later, or Amber Steel, another really good aggro deck. And Yoan, I'm sure I butchered that. I apologize. Running a really unique Amber Steel. And I say unique because it's running 2 World's Greatest Criminal Minds. And when I first saw the list, I saw the World's Greatest Criminal Mind first, and I was like, oh, he must be on Queens. No, he's not. No Queens. Okay, maybe the Mulan. No, nothing. No support, which tells me that he's running World's Greatest Criminal Mind for really one reason, and that's green-blue. So I'm really curious how many green-blues you ran into throughout the day. If you ever watch this video and tell me, and did it pay off to run that? Because otherwise that World's Greatest Criminal Mind isn't going to do anything for you throughout the day. So if you wanted to take this list into your local meta, into your set champs, if you're not expecting green-blue players, switch that out for something. Or throw in something that gives support. Maybe you really want the World's Greatest Criminal Mind. Again, I mentioned a buddy of mine in the Discord, the Meyer Madness Discord. He played World's Greatest Criminal Mind in one of his local events, and he was running some of those support characters, and it's just a really good answer while you're also questing. So that is a possibility. But looking at this list in particular, it's doing a lot of things that we know and love. I think one of the interesting things is the 3 baby rhinos and the 4 big rhinos. Again, that's something that if I'm running rhino, I hardly ever shift it. But in those matches like green yellow or amber steel, I really want to see that rhino because it just really slows things down. It forces your opponent to have strength of a raging fire and 5 characters to answer your rhino or troubadour, right? And 5 characters. So it's difficult for that deck to answer. It's difficult for green yellow to answer. So I found that a little bit interesting. And then the troubadours on 3. But looking at what he added in, of course, would be the 2 World's Greatest Criminal Minds and the 2 Gem Deers, but also the 3 Calhouns. So Calhoun, again, we've seen a lot of Amber Steel lists recently just cutting Calhoun completely. They're not running it. They're going a heavier aggro route, and Yoan decided that I want to add that back. And it probably paid dividends. Again, really high conversion rate for Amber Steel and Green Yellow aggro. So I'm sure having those Calhouns was actually a big deal. And maybe that's part of the reason he wasn't as worried about trying really hard to get that Rhino shift, because he has the Calhoun instead on turn 2. The rest of the list is what you expect. 3 Fire the Cannons. I think that's the bare minimum that you run in Amber Steel anymore. I can't stress enough how important I think Fire the Cannons is for Amber Steel. Like, that card alone wins so many matches against Blurple and Amber Steel, in my opinion, and Green Blue as well. Like, just a phenomenal card. So I really like the list. I like that we're seeing Calhoun possibly come back. You know, I've been messing around with mines again with Calhoun as well. So I think that now, as we're seeing more Blurple and we see the aggro decks rise, I think that's a good reason to think we run things again like the Calhoun, like the mines. But that's a story for another time and a later time. So really good showing, and congratulations representing Amber Steel. I love to see it. I love to see it go and do so well. Next up, we've got another green yellow list. This one a little bit different, and I thought we saw green yellow this weekend, and there was one board that I thought was unbeatable, and I don't know if it was this individual or not. I think it was, where he had 2 Tianas down and 2 Gem Deers, and I looked at that board and I said, that's game. Like, how does your opponent come back from this, and it was against Lucas, the Blurple player that won. And of course, I think he had 2 Into the Unknowns, and he just set up really well to it. Anyways, it was it was a great board, and that's what I want to talk about, is what happens when this deck can run those gem deers and gets those down, because this one, not as many 1-drops. We're on 4, 8, 12, 16, 17, 18, 22, 24. So I guess 24 1-drops instead of 25, but we're on 6 of the reduced character cost. So a good chance of getting the turn 2 Tiana. And so you can go turn 2 Tiana into a turn 3 Gem Deer, and now most decks are going to have an extremely difficult time dealing with that Tiana. Like, they have to have Into the Unknown to have any chance of clearing your board at this point. Or Under the Sea, there's cards, right? Green Blue has a plethora. But I think it's really neat. It stops. Purple Steel already has a really hard time dealing with Tiana, but you throw Tiana behind a Gem Deer, and it's almost impossible for them to now be able to deal with that. They have to see Strength of a Raging Fire, but they also have to build up 4 characters, build up the cards that can sing it, as well as the cards that can challenge. Like, it becomes a lot to deal with while you're just questing away. So to make room for some of that stuff, though, we cut one of the 1-drops, we cut an Improvise, but we also cut the Shift Tramp. So you'll notice that this list is not running that Shift Tramp that lets you draw a card when your characters are banished. So that is something to look at as well. So this list, going a little bit harder in the paint to get the turn 2 Tiana, to get the early aggro, sacrificing some of those later cards that are really good into turn 4, turn 5, turn 6. For example, 3 ladies versus 4 ladies, the Shift Tramp versus no Shift Tramp, things like that. So I like the list. I like that it's how it operates is so much different than the other one. Like, what you're trying to do and the way you go about it. Yes, you're still an aggro deck, but Alessandra is doing it slightly different than how Enrico was going about doing it. Enrico, in my opinion, having a little bit more playability into a couple of the later turns, versus Alessandra just going in and trying to cripple their opponent and win in 2.5 minutes. But really great showing. So next up, we have Jonas. This is the last deck for top 8 on Purple Steel. First thing you'll notice, Madam Mim Skater, right? Again, every Purple Steel list in top 8 on Madam Mim. We have Thiago that's really high on Madam Mim now. Like, just lots of players really high on that card. But other things that stand out in this list, the Madam Mim Elephants. Like, Jonas is like, you know what? I love Madam Mim, and I'm throwing it all in. And so Madam Mim Elephants, something that you don't see in a lot of Purple Steel lists, and something that I'm sure caught a lot of people by surprise. That Madam Mim Elephant, great for challenging, great for, dealing damage to ready characters if she has damage on her. So this list, I think, kind of toolboxy, right? One thing, we got the 1 Madam Mim, we've got 1 White Rose, so another Purple Steel list that's going away from that reach that the 4 Cobras and the 4 White Roses give you, but then 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2. Like, toolboxy. It's a toolbox Purple Steel list, and again, just running a lot of cards that are just good. We see the Dolores Madrigal that's letting you draw a card when your opponent has an exerted character. Also questing for 2, which is great. So we got 4 Docs, 2 Dolores Madrigals, 2 Yzma, so lots of draw package happening here. And then of course you have the Dumbo and Genie package, which again, great draw or great value. I gotta go back really quick. I think I'm so used to seeing Dumbo, okay, it is in Vincent's list as well. I had to check, okay? But Jonas, another great list. We're on the Fire the Cannons, of course. I can't say more praise about this card, about how great I really think it is. But again, also the Happies. So Purple Steel, just a safe deck to run. Like, it's good into everything. Like, it really is. It doesn't, it's really great into aggro, and then it's fine into Blurple. It's great into Green Blue. Again, when we look at this top 8, we'll go back. There's no Green Blue in top 8. And a big reason for that is most likely because of this. 3 Purple Steels in top 8 is going to make it really difficult for for those green blue decks to make it, because purple steel is just so good against green blue still. And even the decks that teched against green blue, which is about, or teched against purple steel, still not able to make it, because when they tech against purple steel, they lose some of that value into those other decks like Blurple, the highest representation. But let's look at that in particular. And this is our top placing green blue player at the DLC Bologna. We have Gonzalo taking 32nd place, an extremely respectable 32nd place, being the highest ranking green blue player at the event. And looking at the list, a lot of things that most people have just cut and said sayonara. We have the 1 Napoleon and the 2 Mouse Queens. All right, the 361 characters coming in here, again, really great in against the purple steel list. They're really hard to Strength of a Raging Fire, like next to impossible to Strength of a Raging Fire. So really good trade value, really good to set up singers with and things like that. And then the other thing that stands out is the 1 Rapunzel. So the Rapunzel, haven't seen this since really the beginning of the set. The 2/5/2 evasive, whenever this character quests, chosen opposing character can't quest during their next turn. So seeing cards that, again, we haven't seen since the beginning of the set, but Gonzalo's saying these are still really good. And as you can see, he proved everyone right, taking 32nd place with this list. Also, the stopped chaos in its tracks. So again, a great card, stringing together 8 inkable, return up to 2 chosen characters with 3 attack or less to each player's hand. So you can use it on your characters. Maybe you want your Hades back, and you can use it on your opponent's characters. Maybe you want more draw with Clarabelle, or you don't want them to trade into you, things like that. So that it's a different list that again saw a lot of success and did really well. But like I was saying, when you run something like Napoleons and Mouse Queens, you do run the risk of being a little bit worse into decks like Blurple, where they want you to have these bad top decks. Like a 3/6/1 doesn't mean much to Blurple when you're only questing for 1, and you need to start catching up, or you need to start doing things and playing cards that do something when you play them, and or maybe quest for more than 1. But really good against purple steel. So I'd be curious to know what ended up knocking Gonzalo out. I just can't imagine it would have been purple steel, and I'm leaning towards it being a green or a Blurple deck that did knock him out. But again, I was really excited to highlight the deck that did perform the best. There were a lot. I did a poll on my YouTube channel on what people thought would win, and there were a lot of people in the comments that were very upset with me that one of the options were not green blue. And so I'm sure they're going to be very excited as well, Gonzalo, that you were able to do so well and represent so well. Next up, though, is the top ranking red purple player. Taking 96th, we have Carrier X with a really cool red purple list. And red purple had one of the coolest plays of the weekend, in my opinion. Not the most exciting, like the match was exciting. It's not my #1 pick, but they had a really cool play that just threw a lot of people off, because what they did, and I don't know if it was Carrier X, but they shifted Mulan on the baby Mulan, and then shifted another Mulan on top of that Mulan to make Mulan just massive, right? And then that Mulan was able to clear a Hades and 2 other characters, and then I believe they were able to come back and win the game when it looked like it was impossible for them to have any chance to do it. So it was really cool. It was really cool to watch. And when we look at the list, again, we're seeing this higher singer cost. So because now they can sing the second star to the right really early to get that card value. They can sing Be King Undisputed to really punish green blue players that rush that big cow and they have nothing else on the field. Mother Gothel, because she's an absolute powerhouse for trades. Like, it's just doing a lot of things correct, and it really is. And I think if red purple still had the rush Peter Pan, like, this deck could really stand a chance at being one of the best decks in the format, because that is one of the biggest things holding it back, is that Maui Half Shark is just, it is so slow. Like, it is extremely slow in that you play it, and then there's so many cards in the meta right now that just answer it, because by the time you play it, Blurple's on their Hades. Green Blue's got your welcomes and things to just bounce it back. Purple Steel has Strength of a Raging Fire, but also the Elsas and Iagos. So there's just a lot that answers one of the strongest cards in the deck, but the deck's still doing really well. So congratulations, Carrier. I was really excited to see this. So next up is what I think was the most exciting match of the entire DLC. All right, and that was green purple, and that was most specifically Justice. And I put David on here as well because this is Justice's list right here, and I don't know if Justice and David know each other, but David plays 202nd with a list extremely similar. I think it was all the same cards except slightly different numbers, so I'm assuming they know each other and tested with each other, but just a really cool list. This was phenomenal to watch because they were at the end of their game. They were trying to prevent going to turns. It was 1-1 at the time, and then in game 3, Justice was on the play, and they were trying to prevent. They were playing cards so fast in just mere seconds. I felt so bad for the casters because there was no way to cast the match. They were just playing and throwing cardboard so fast and making these top level decisions in just mere seconds, tenths of a second, in doing these things. But the deck was just so much fun to watch, and I can imagine though playing against this deck is the most aggravating thing ever, because you're drawing so many cards. They're playing these Amethyst Chromacons, drawing you cards. You're feeling really good, and then Cusco's bouncing things or putting things on the bottom of the deck, but it draws you cards so you feel good, and then bend to my will. And then you draw a bunch more cards because they use the Amethyst Chromacons, and then bend to my will. And again, a third bend to my will. But the things that the deck does, it just does so well. Like the Hey-Heys, abusing so many Blurple and Green Blue players because they're ramping higher than you, and then you play this Hey-Hey that also quests for 2. They can also sing Mother Knows Best. They can also be a sing together character, so Hey-Hey just being an MVP, and then you have this Cusco that can really just punish. So now you play the Cusco, and they have to put that card on the bottom of their deck. Yes, they get to draw a card, but you remove something from the field. Ursula, really good into all these decks. Mother Gothel, I think, is one of the more interesting options, but it serves a lot of purposes. You have this great bounce option. You have a really good body. Being a 4/6, it trades into a lot of things, and it quests for 2, which the deck can be slow, so you need this ability to quest for 2. But what this deck is trying to do is survive the early game, which it can do relatively well with Rafiki, with this shift 4 Cusco's, Mother Gothel's bouncing things, and then you just draw a bunch of cards. You let your opponent draw cards, but you're just making them lose all their cards with Bend to My Will. And it's awesome. So it's a really neat deck. I really can't wait to see if Justice or David post anything. I think they're both on Twitter and we're talking about it, what they would change. But I think it's a really, really neat list. And the match with Justice against Green Blue, just top notch. One of the most exciting matches I've ever watched. Like, it really was. But ladies and gentlemen, that's all the lists. All right, that is all the lists that I wanted to showcase for DLC Bologna. Again, if you guys want to watch it, it's all on my channel. I'll put it in the description. Day 2 is split into 2 matches because this desert internet can be unreliable at times, and the internet did die in the middle of round 11. But it was awesome. It was so good to be back in that competitive season and getting to watch really competitive Disney Lorcana. And I can't wait. I don't think I'll be able to make the first 2 DLCs in the NA, but I might be able to make an Infinity one. You know, deployment kind of just gets in the way of things. But I look forward to the opportunity, and it's just great. It's just fun. I look forward to the future of Lorcana all the time, and seeing DLCs again really helps look forward to that future. But ladies and gentlemen, I'm getting all sappy, and I'm going to end the video. But again, if you won set champs, things like that, if you did well, if you want to brag, hit me up, join the Discord, link will be in the description. Above anything else though, winning, losing, whatever, it doesn't matter. Remember, nothing matters more than staying happy and healthy, and I'll see you around.